am Delegate Michelle Guyton, District 42B in Baltimore County, and I'm going to make this really quick for y'all because it has been a very long day, as you can see. I am asking for your support and a favorable report on House Bill 178, simply protects bicyclists by prohibiting stopping, standing, or parking in a bike lane or bicycle path. So the legislation is important to us in lots of ways. It supports Vision Zero. It supports our Complete Streets commitments. It changes driver behavior to help ensure that everyone gets home safely. And it also encourages no emission transportation and improves the health of our citizens. All of those in one little change. So this legislation also puts the state of Maryland in line with Baltimore City has these provisions already in place, Washington, D.C., and Virginia. So you will note that there are a couple letters and testimonies favorable with amendments. I have worked with Federation of the Blind and MDOT to address their concerns, and the amendments that you should have in front of you, because they were submitted to the council here in ENT, will lower that fiscal note that you're seeing from MDOT. That is the reason for changing, making those changes. They were under the impression that they would have to change all of their signs all over the state. We reworded it so that they feel like they no longer have to do that. So there are some concerns that the trucking industry has, and I know that you will hear them as well. My only question that I hope they will answer is that in these other areas that have already made this change in law, how are they dealing with the concerns that they bring to you today? And I think they're managing. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll turn it over to my panel.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce. I am Seth Grimes with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, which supports HB 178. I have 4 points. This is a safety measure. This is a very straightforward addition to Maryland Code. This is well precedented, and state code already provides necessary exemptions. So I'll just elaborate a bit to say safety measure. When a bicycle lane is blocked or obstructed, bicyclists are forced into traffic lanes where they are less safe and where they also impede potentially vehicle traffic. So this is favorable for not impeding vehicle traffic. As written, noting the amendment, as written, this is a one-line addition to Maryland Transportation Code that mirrors 10 existing provisions that state a person may not stop, stand, or park a vehicle. These all are intended to ensure pedestrian and safe vehicular passage. This law, as Delegate Guyton mentioned, is very similar to laws in Baltimore, in the state of Virginia, in Washington, D.C., also in states including Florida, of all states. So the precedents are there. The Virginia law simply states, quoting, parking, stopping, or standing is prohibited on any bridge or in any tunnel and on any sidewalk, bicycle lane, or shared use path unless otherwise indicated by the department without further conditions. Indicated by the department. I had Will Pines, the state highway administrator, phone me Friday 2 weeks ago to talk about this bill, and we discussed the kind of exemptions necessary that Delegate Guyton mentioned. I'll just mention that Maryland Transportation Article 21-106 provides an exemption already from stopping, standing, parking prohibitions for emergency vehicles, fire alarms, medical emergencies, and Transportation Article 21-1003. These prohibitions would, quote, apply, quote, except as necessary to avoid conflict with other traffic or in compliance with law or directions of a police officer or traffic control device. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Please give this a favorable report.
Good afternoon. Jed Weeks, again, the Executive Director of Bikemore, asking the committee to vote favorably on HB 178. In Baltimore City, as noted, it's already illegal to stop, stand, or park in a bike lane or bike path. And Seth mentioned that the exemptions that are sort of required to make these things function are already in place in state law. We believe this law is working in Baltimore City without any further exemptions. It is a challenge in a compact city. There's always competing curbside interests on our roadways, but we really encourage design solutions for these competing interests. So ensuring when you're putting in bike facilities that you include loading zones, mid-block ADA parking access, flex zones, and other treatments that manage delivery and access without adding further exemptions that could endanger vulnerable road users into code. As Seth noted, it's already illegal to stop, stand, or park everywhere else a vulnerable road user may be, at a bus stop, in a crosswalk, in an intersection, on a sidewalk. It just makes sense to make this consistent for bike lanes too. And so we're confident that, like Baltimore City, Maryland can enact this legislation as drafted, and in combination with the adopted MDOT Complete Streets policy, design roads that are both safe for all road users and accommodating of other freight and mobility access needs. Thanks.
Joshua Feldmark from Bike Maryland. Sitting here in front of me for some reason is the proposed income tax changes, so I'm going to spend 2 minutes talking about that instead, if that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. Bike Maryland says us too.
And I believe we have one more in the panel. Yes, come on up.
For the record, John Corn, Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. Thank you for the bill. I'll say us double two. Thank you.
We love that. Delegate Foley, your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Guyton, for bringing this bill and for the advocates for supporting it. I think it's an incredibly important for safety reasons, if nothing else. My question is, would this include that when you say that person may not stop, stand, or park a vehicle in a bike lane? Would that include a scooter?
Do you want to take it?
You're talking about like an electric scooter?
Yeah, I'm talking about like one of those
scooter share?
rental electric scooters, because people leave those everywhere, and I have seen them in bike lanes
You want to take that?
and on bike paths.
So at least with the rental scooters, there are already policies in place, so like in Baltimore City locally, that prohibit parking them in those locations. And again, generally we try to use like a design solution there. So in Baltimore City, we have a system that we're continuing to evolve, but it basically gives incentives and discounts for people to park them lawfully, and then essentially fines them or bans them from the rental apps if they park them unlawfully. So like blocking a curb cut in a bike lane in a parking spot or
Okay,
something like
that's
that.
great for Baltimore City,
Yeah.
but my question is, would the bill cover that? And if not, would you consider putting in some language that maybe possibly would cover, people who dump those scooters in the bike lanes?
I would consider that. I believe that is already against the law. I believe the disabilities community a few years ago, but this is just from memory, actually worked on some legislation not to leave those scooters laying around where people in wheelchairs couldn't get through and where people who are visually impaired. But I will double check that.
Okay.
And if it's not, then yes, I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
I would just add to that scooters are considered bicycles in Maryland code unless otherwise specified. And we're all required to comply with Maryland rules of the road unless there's a specific exception. And so I would think leaving a bicycle or a scooter or any other type of mobility device in the bike lane would be a violation, no different than a vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
See no other questions. I would, at this time, call up the favorable with amendments, Lou Campion. And then the next one is Ronza Offman virtually.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Louis Campion, Maryland Motor Truck Association. And we are here in support with amendments, and I appreciate the extensive back and forth exchanges and opportunities with the sponsor's office to talk about some of the concerns that we have. Because we are here appreciating the need to protect bike lanes. The challenge we have is that curbside delivery has been diminished significantly over the last several years, particularly as we've seen, bike lane expansion. And that was actually recognized back in 2017 by the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, where they actually had a freight delivery symposium that dealt extensively with curbside delivery challenges. And, we're talking about deliveries where UPS or FedEx or Amazon are having to stop, and the width of either available curbside parking, if it exists, is not sufficient and does protrude out into potentially a bike lane. A great example of that is, I know we heard that Baltimore has a prohibition, is North Charles Street in Baltimore. You can bring it right up on Google Maps, and you'll see the bike lane, and you'll see curbside parking that is available, that is very narrow and insufficient for the width of a commercial motor vehicle. So, other incidents where this can happen, household goods movers. If you don't have a driveway, for example, at your home, and they have to be parked for an extensive period of time. Home heating fuel deliveries, those types of deliveries where you have to be within a certain distance. There are jurisdictions like New York City that have provided certain carve-outs for active loading or unloading, right? So we have offered an amendment. I appreciate consideration. I'm hoping that the subcommittee will look at that amendment, but it's really for limited windows of time, active loading or unloading. You have to display hazard warning lights, for example, just because our guys don't have a place to park to make those deliveries, particularly in more congested areas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Lou. And we're going to, if you stay there, we're going to call up our next virtual witness, and that's Ronza Offman. You can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and of course, Delegate Guyton, the sponsor. I'm grateful to be able to speak with you today, and I appreciate that our requested amendment is a friendly amendment to protect individuals with disabilities. I do not believe, and our organization does not believe, that a design solution is sufficient. We believe that the law needs to specifically have this carve out, and because Baltimore City is currently unsafe for us without that carve out. I myself have nearly died trying to cross to get to a vehicle loading or unloading me, to get to a bus where the supposed cross is supposed to be in the middle of the street, without me having to have to go all the way to the end of the block, cross at a corner, and come back where nobody else do, just so that I can get to my Uber or Lyft. I have recently had the bottom of my cane sheared off as I stand waiting for through traffic to stop so that I can get from across the bike lane. So you go across from the curb, across the bike lane, across a parking lane, across 2 moving rows of traffic, and then to the other curb where people can load and unload. As a result, it is increasingly and absolutely necessary that we are able to have those vehicles that are picking up individuals with disabilities come to the curb, even if that means in a bike lane. I think this can be done safely. It's in limited exceptions. Also, individuals with wheelchairs, there are folks in Baltimore City who are trying to get into a vehicle on the moving traffic side of a street because of where the bike lane is located. They are in moving traffic, and in some cases have either been hit, had their wheelchair hit, or nearly been hit. So a design solution is not working because law enforcement says people who are in the bike lane take priority. They don't know that there is supposedly ADA supports for this. Even when we file civil rights complaints with the city, those take months. And in one case, they adjudicated it in our favor, told us they were going to restripe the property to make sure that everybody knew that there was a loading area. It hasn't happened, and it's been a year. So please vote favorable, but only with the amendment. Again, I appreciate that Delegate Guyton is
Thank you so
this
much.
friendly amendment.
Thank you so much, Ronza. Can I ask a clarifying question to your testimony?
Sure.
You mentioned, are you crossing at corners with apron cutouts to get from sidewalk to sidewalk when you're crossing a street, or are you crossing in the middle of a bike lane?
So you have to cross in the middle of a bike lane in order to get to where the loading zone and unloading zones have been set up on the other side of the street. So you're crossing a bike lane and you're crossing moving traffic as well, because you can only, when they put the bike
At
lane
sections where there is a crosswalk, correct?
Yes, it's a bike lane. They call it a bike lane crosswalk, but it's like not the corner, if that makes sense.
Yes, okay, thank you so much.
And I apologize, I don't know the exact vernacular of street design.
Oh, I don't either, you're quite fine. We'll make it up together.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, that ends the hearing for HB 178. Thank you all so much.